Hey guys, it's Logan here with Hydra 572 bringing you a blade review. Today I've got the SOG Twitch XL, my first folding SOG knife. Let's go ahead and jump in with intended usage. I see it as an EDC blade or a work blade. I'll cover it more later, but if you're looking for a knife to cut cardboard boxes with, if you need a blade for that, if you're doing that a lot for your work or just throughout your daily life, this will be a great blade for you. And emergency defensive, I think if it was all you had, you would prefer to use it. Pricing, $46 and a couple of cents on eBay, shipping included. And rarely, Blade HQ actually came in really low on this one, $44 on Blade HQ, but you would have to pay for shipping. Let's go ahead and jump into the blade profile. It is a very utilitarian looking drop point. It is narrow in that there dimension. Also a pretty narrow stock, about the same as the Spyderco Tenacious, I believe 0.13 inches. The tip is pretty acute, but the way that the grinds with the swedge and the flat portion and then the hollow grind conspire, I believe that it should be relatively resistant to fracturing, but I think if you were to abuse this tip you could get it to snap off, being the thin stock that it is. Belly, well, you don't have a lot. Like I said, narrow in this dimension, and then you guys can see the curvature there. But I think it gets the job done. I don't know what it is about this blade profile, but like I said, in that cardboard cut test that I did, this thing just shredded and it maintained its edge. It was the best knife that I tested out of all the knives that I did that day, and it was very impressive. The steel is AUS 8A, AUS 8, or sorry, not AUS 8A, just AUS 8, regular old stuff. If there's any difference, I've never perceived one. For the retention, like I said, it was pretty damn good, coming out of that cardboard test with flying colors. And the sharpening was easy enough. I did get it pretty dull. I did a lot of cutting with it, and it did take some work to get it back on, but it was doable on the Sharpmaker. It didn't need to be reprofiled or anything on the Wicked Edge. The grind, I don't know, somehow it works great. We got a thin stock, the very, very slight hollow grind. You may be perceiving it even more in pictures and in this video than it is. It is just very slightly hollow. It is a great looking grind. Very good satin finish, accentuating those grind lines. And yeah, like I said, somehow this thing just shreds. It cuts really well, paper and cardboard. Didn't do a whole lot of testing with cord, but it was cutting cord pretty well too. The deployment is a flipper and thumb studs, and the deployment is not excellent. I've got it pretty tight to minimize blade play, but it is pretty sticky, and I have relatively strong fingers. I have the fingers of somebody who flicks open knives a lot, and I have to give it a pretty good jolt to get it open. With the flipper, the thumb studs are a bit easier. And I think the reason that it's not very smooth moving on to lock is because of this split back lock that they've done, so that they could have a flipper with a back lock. So this is one piece of metal that is bent over and around, leaving a channel for the flipper to come through so that you can access it. And well, I think that's very cool and innovative. I think I've never seen one in this style before, and I didn't think of it when I was thinking of ways to have flippers with back locks. It just minimalizes how well the assist can help, and it doesn't have a particularly smooth surface yet. I think if they worked with it and kept with the idea, they could make it a little bit more smooth, just working on the angles of how the lock comes into that back blade stock there. The lock does have a safety. You can lock it both open and closed. It is that little piece there, so forward, no deployment, which, you know, I don't need, but I won't complain about a safety feature that I don't have to be disengaging all the time. And then also you can go ahead and lock it open, which again I don't need, but it is nice. I will not complain. Maybe if you were doing a lot of cardboard cutting, maybe go ahead and engage the lock. Otherwise, just a cool little safety feature, something that they didn't have to add in, but it's pretty cool. And both of those are jimped, that lock and the little safety measure. Play, well, we've got a little bit of play both ways. left to right and up and down. I don't think, well, I know that the lock isn't going to fail due to it, but it is pretty perceivable. And it's even more than I would like. It's more than what you see on a lot of budget liner locks. So yeah, there is definitely some play. The handle material, we have a black anodized aluminum, which it feels pretty good in hand. It is smooth. G10 would offer more traction, but it is what it is, and I think the handle fits pretty well. The anodization, the coating has held up pretty well. You might be able to very faintly detect there are some scrapes just from, I think, being in my car, being in my pocket, rubbing on multi-tools, stuff like that. And I actually put the thing through the washer, and I don't think the dryer, and it did rub off some finish near the edges, which I'm hoping will weather out some, but it does not look too bad at all. But you will be able to damage that finish if you try hard enough. The steel held up great though. All the screws, all the liners, everything, nothing rusted. I got it out pretty quick and got it re-oiled and everything. So moving on to ergonomics. And different from a lot of the blades that I like, this is a perceivably slim handle. Very utilitarian piece as far as hand fit. And we have some sharp edges along the inside, but you don't really perceive of them when you're doing hard cutting. I'm not quite sure why, because you definitely can dig your fingers in and find them, but when you've got your saber grip going, your Filipino grip, you're not really feeling those sharp edges. It's not too much of a problem, but if you really dig your hand in there, you can feel them. So that's sort of a bummer. And we do find ourselves lacking jimping on the spine of the blade. It is a pretty thin stock, so that Filipino grip with your thumb on top does feel a little bit weird, even with this full non-ground portion. I just think it would feel better with some jimping to really get your thumb stuck in, incorporate your thumb a little bit more into your grip. I think that would be a positive thing, and I'm not sure why we don't have it. The jimping on the flipper is a joke. It's not really providing any additional help. The clip, we got the deep carry clip. I think that is a really cool stylization, having SOG be carved into the clip. But the deep carry clip being great for concealing the knife. I find that people can still see the clip, and that your fabric of your pants gets caught in this little area. You can see where it extends and folds over. It either gets caught in there or it doesn't. In both ways, it's sort of obnoxious. If it doesn't get caught, you don't really get a full clip engagement. You're not really getting enough tension. When it does get caught, it takes a little extra force to both get it in there and caught and pull it off. So that's sort of a bummer. I do like the deep carry, but I don't know if we can add something in there or just take it all the way down to the knife handle so it's flush. But the way it is right now is not perfect. So moving on to presentation, overall I think it was pretty good. I'll be honest with you guys, when I first saw this blade, I saw it in a hardware store, and I thought it looked pretty funky with the thin handle, that dimension speaking, and the thin blade profile. To have that flipper sticking out there, I don't know, it just looked kind of malproportioned and weird. But it did look interesting, and the more I saw it, I was in that hardware store pretty often. They've got a pretty big SOG display, and it kind of grew on me, and I'm really glad that I picked it up. What actually got me over it was realizing that it was a really cool blade if you covered up that much. If you were just looking at that, then this blade makes a whole lot of sense, this design. And then that flipper and that protrusion is just there to give you the flipper and show off that cool design of theirs, and gives you a little bit of guard, either just to protect your hand and ergonomically speaking, or God forbid if you did have to defend yourself, it would prevent you from slipping forward. Like I said, not a lot of traction coming off that handle scale, but the way that it's built, your hand's in a powerful position and you won't be slipping forward all too easily. So presentation really good. I think the handle looks great. The anodization is pretty beautiful. It's a good shade of black. As I discussed, the grind lines look great. The contrast between the different directions and visibilities of the grind lines between the swedge and the flat portion, which by the way is great for sharpening on any system that involves a clamp or just pretty much any consistent angle sharpener. I think it all looks pretty good, well put together. So yeah, presentation was pretty good. Quality, I think these pivot screws are dumb. I don't know if you can see them. I know this video is pretty reflection-y for whatever reason, partially just because the blade finish is really reflective. But you've got these two different sized terraced pivot screws, and I don't really get it, because other than that and maybe the carving on the clip, this is a pretty utilitarian design, so I'm not sure what all that's about. I don't really think it looks all that good to start with, and I don't think it really fits with this blade, so I'm not sure why. I do like oversized pivots, but this is just, it's sort of weird. But the hardware quality and all that, no problems besides what I described already with the pocket clip. So quality-wise, it's good. The quality of the finish is really good. It's, like I said, it's been through a washer and it held up fine. The blade held up great. It is taking some abuse with some character. It does not look bad at all. The value, well, you got OS 8 plus aluminum handles for $45. Sure, it's not a value knockout, but that is right in the alley of what you can expect, paying $45 for a knife. These are good materials to have. And it works really well, so I won't be complaining. I don't know what their heat treat involves. I think off the top of my head they got this up to 52, 53 HRC, and that means that their edge geometry is just fantastic. The way that this thing cuts, it looks like a little bit of a shallow edge for me. If I was reprofiling it, I would do, or rather it looks a little steep, I would make it a little shallower, back it off just a little bit, make it more gradual. But something about what they did between the hollow grind and that edge finish, this thing just cuts really damn well, and that's sort of putting to rest all of my complaints that I have about this blade. If it fits well in hand and it feels good while you're cutting and it cuts really well, sharpens really well, ultimately at the end of the day it's got to be a positive review, right? Oh, the competition, for once I actually own most of these blades, so we have Rat 1 and the Spyderco Tenacious, maybe the Resilience too. I didn't include it just because it's a little bit more expensive, still less expensive than the Twitch. But it's a little bit bigger, a little more tactical, defensive minded. So looking at these options, the thing that stands out about this blade, it is distinctly by another manufacturer. It doesn't feel like a Spyderco. The Ontario feels different as well, but it feels more different from the Spyderco build and the Ontario build than they feel from each other, if that's not too weird of a thing to say. Just with the non-textured handles, and it's a pretty unique, I know it looks sort of run-of-the-mill, but as far as its hand fit and my collection, this is a pretty unique design. Being rather slim, you guys know that I like the more hand-filling options. I typically find those more ergonomic, but this one fits in hand pretty well, and if you're a thin knife type of guy, I think you're really going to love it. I think it would be aided a little bit. You guys typically don't hear me complain about the weight of a knife, and I'm still not doing it, but the liners aren't skeletonized here, and if this blade was lighter, like considerably lighter, right now it's at 4.2 ounces, if you could get, I know we're talking a big amount of weight here, especially with the aluminum handle scales, but if you could get an ounce off of that, then it's in the territory where you can really recommend it as a light knife, whereas right now it's just an average weight knife, considering what it's made out of in blade size and all that. So I think it's definitely earned its place competing with these blades here, and honestly it's been getting some carry from me, even outside of the review rotation. After I was done getting all the data that I needed for the review, I've been carrying it some. It's been replacing the native, that left side, weak side carry outside the pocket, and it's been doing pretty great work. So yeah, I think it's definitely earned its place in the relatively competitive ranks of the $30 to $50 knife range. When you get to 50, it gets a little bit more competitive. Things like the Centofonte come into play, and that is a really light blade. But let's not overdo competition here and just say that in a very competitive division, one that a whole lot of knife manufacturers have thrown their hat into in the past 5 years, I think the Twitch really does hold its own. If you're looking for a great cardboard blade, a kind of utilitarian looking thing, easy to sharpen steel, yeah, and a pretty good ergonomic hand fit for somebody that likes the slim knife feel, I think it'll be great. Even for me, I like the larger handled feel. I like the more width in that dimension, and this still works pretty well for me. I've enjoyed using it. I've enjoyed cutting with it. This thing has been a little champ around here. And so pass and fail, obviously, like I said, if it cuts great, sharpens great, and it feels good in hand, it's going to get a pass. Despite the hardware gripes, the clip, the deployment not being stellar, all minor fissures in the crust of an excellent knife. And real quick before we're done, I'll move on to stats. Overall length 7.5, handle length 4 1/4, blade length 3 1/4, blade thickness 0.13, and weight 4 ounces. I've said before that a small knife feels deceptively like a large knife. This is a relatively large knife that feels deceptively like a small knife, but has the cutting performance to back up its size and more. So, if you guys are interested, check out the SOG Twitch XL. I feel like it's been under-publicized, but I'm just talking from my little corner of our YouTube community here. Yeah, it's a great blade, competing well in its division. Thank you guys for watching. Stay tuned for more of the same.